one shot. That's all it took. A German sniper could freeze an entire battlefield, pin down hundreds of men, and shatter morale with a single pull of the trigger. But that same deadly precision made them the most hated soldiers of the war, hunted like animals, shown no mercy, and often executed on sight. This is the dark reality of why German snipers were feared, and why almost no one let them live. On the battlefields of World War II, German snipers were not ordinary soldiers. They were shadows that struck fear into the hearts of men. A single rifle crack from an unseen position could stop an entire platoon in its tracks. It wasn't just the bullet that killed, it was the silence that followed. Was another shot coming? Who would be next? These men became some of the most feared figures of the war. Allied infantry soon learned that a sniper's bullet wasn't only aimed at generals or officers. It was just as likely to take out a radio operator, a machine gunner, or even the medic rushing to save a fallen comrade. Snipers disrupted the rhythm of battle in ways artillery or tanks never could. They created paranoia, making soldiers duck into cover, hesitate to move, and second-guess every step across open ground. To the Americans, the British, and above all, the Soviets, a sniper wasn't just a soldier following orders. He was viewed as a hunter, an executioner, a man who fought outside the supposed rules of war. And in an era when honor and duty were still words carried close to the heart, being stalked and killed by someone you never saw felt like a betrayal of those rules. It bred a special kind of hatred, deeper than for any other enemy. To be targeted by a sniper was personal. It was humiliating. This is why, from the very beginning, German snipers were hunted differently. They were not seen as fellow combatants to be captured and respected. They were seen as predators that had to be eradicated. On the battlefield, their effectiveness made them indispensable to the German war machine. But that same effectiveness signed their death warrant. Wherever they appeared, they weren't just fighting the enemy in front of them. They were also fighting the deep, merciless hatred of men who swore they would never let a sniper walk away alive. German sniper schools were not like ordinary training grounds. Recruits who volunteered or were selected faced weeks of relentless drills designed to strip away hesitation and transform them into patient, lethal hunters. They learned camouflage to the point of invisibility, covering themselves in mud, leaves, and snow until even trained spotters could not pick them out at a few meters distance. They practiced lying motionless for hours, sometimes an entire day, in sweltering heat or bone-chilling cold, waiting for a single, perfect shot. A sniper's value wasn't in spraying bullets, it was in killing with precision, with one squeeze of the trigger. The German doctrine emphasized that a sniper's role was psychological as much as physical. By striking down officers, runners, and machine gunners, they could cripple an enemy unit's ability to fight, even without killing many men. Their weapons were carefully selected, usually the Mauser Kar 98K fitted with a scope, prized for its accuracy and stopping power. Training also instilled absolute self-reliance. Many missions sent them out in pairs or even alone, with only their spotter to share the burden. And with this training came a mark of distinction. Snipers were considered elite, even feared within their own ranks. But this status came with a curse. To Allied soldiers, snipers weren't viewed as regular infantry. They were predators, playing by different rules. The very skills that made them effective, stealth, patience, ruthlessness, also marked them as cold-blooded killers in the eyes of their enemies. By the time a German sniper left school, he had mastered the art of death from the shadows. What he didn't yet know was that his training also painted a target on his back. Once his camouflage cloak and scoped rifle were recognized, he was no longer just another soldier in the field. He was a hunted man. A sniper's bullet didn't just wound or kill, it infected the battlefield with fear. Allied veterans recalled how a single shot from an unseen German marksman could pin entire companies in place. A medic's attempt to reach a wounded man was cut short by another crack. Supply runners stopped moving. Men refused to stand or cross open ground. In that frozen silence, the psychological warfare of the sniper was complete. Soldiers began to feel as though eyes were always watching them, no matter where they hid. Helmets suddenly felt too thin, sandbags too low, cover too exposed. Men whispered that a sniper could kill you even if you blinked at the wrong moment. In Stalingrad, on the Normandy beaches, in the forests of the Ardennes, snipers dictated the pace of battle by forcing men to hesitate. And in combat, hesitation could mean death. This power over the enemy's mind is what made snipers so despised. To ordinary soldiers, fighting a sniper felt different than facing artillery or tanks. A shell or a machine gun burst killed indiscriminately, but a sniper chose his target. He looked you in the eye through a scope before pulling the trigger. That made it feel personal, almost like an execution. The hatred bred by this fear was overwhelming. When soldiers finally cornered or captured a sniper, the rage of dozens of men who had been paralyzed by that invisible hunter often erupted. Few snipers expected mercy, and most never received it. In the minds of those under their crosshairs, a sniper was not a warrior playing the same game. He was a tormentor who had stolen their confidence, humiliated them with fear, and hunted them one by one. No theater of war defined the sniper's reputation like the Eastern Front. In the shattered ruins of Stalingrad, in endless forests and snowfields, German snipers became both feared killers and hunted prey. The Red Army, having suffered under their fire, responded by training an entire generation of counter-snipers. Soviet sharpshooters like Vasily Zaitsev became immortalized in propaganda, turning the sniper war into something personal, a duel of wills between hidden hunters. German snipers in Stalingrad quickly learned they were not the only ghosts in the rubble. Soviet counter-snipers set traps, leaving helmets or dummy targets to lure shots. The instant a German revealed his position, he often found himself in the crosshairs of a rival lying in wait. For German infantry, their own snipers were vital shields, suppressing Soviet advances through precise shots from the shadows. But for the snipers themselves, every mission was a roll of the dice. Kill the enemy or be hunted down in turn. The Soviets treated captured snipers with no mercy. Survivors reported that many were executed on the spot, their scoped rifles marking them as hated executioners. To Soviet soldiers, a sniper wasn't a soldier at all. He was a murderer who killed without warning or honor. German accounts describe the paranoia of operating in these conditions, always knowing another rifle might be trained on them at the very moment they looked through their scope. For the snipers of both armies, the Eastern Front was hell on earth. It wasn't just about survival. It was about outthinking, outweighting, and outlasting an enemy who hated you more than any other type of soldier. It was a duel of shadows, where the loser didn't walk away. For most soldiers in World War II, capture meant the slim hope of survival, prisoner of war camps, hardship, and uncertainty, but at least a chance to live. For German snipers, capture was almost always a death sentence. Unlike regular infantrymen who could blend in with the mass of prisoners, snipers carried the tools of their trade, the scoped Kar 98K, camouflage smocks, and specialized gear that gave them away instantly. Once identified, the hatred toward them boiled over. Soviet soldiers in particular treated captured snipers with merciless brutality. To them, a sniper was a murderer, someone who chose his victims deliberately, often officers, medics, or runners, and did so from hiding. Many accounts describe captured snipers being shot on the spot, beaten to death, or paraded in front of enraged troops before being executed. Western allies were not much kinder. American and British troops, exhausted and bitter from watching comrades picked off by unseen hunters, often refused to take snipers alive. Even civilians who discovered one were quick to exact vengeance, seeing them as cowards who preyed on the helpless. German snipers knew this, and many chose to fight to the last bullet rather than surrender. They carried grenades not only for battle, but also to deny themselves to the enemy if cornered. Some even preferred suicide over falling into enemy hands. The German High Command tried to encourage them with awards and propaganda, portraying snipers as heroes defending the Reich. But on the ground, every sniper understood the truth. Their profession carried a mark of death, not just from bullets, but from the certainty that mercy would not be shown if captured. They were soldiers who walked the battlefield knowing that surrender was never an option. Because snipers were so feared, entire strategies developed to hunt them down. Allied forces didn't treat them as just another threat. They became high-priority targets. The moment a sniper revealed his position, with a single shot, artillery officers called in barrages on suspected hideouts. Shells cratered hillsides, flattened buildings, and turned tree lines into splintered wreckage in an attempt to silence one rifle. Spotters were trained to catch the telltale signs of a sniper, the faint glint of sunlight off a scope, the unnatural outline of foliage, or the ripple of disturbed grass. Once spotted, counter-snipers engaged in duels that could last hours, both sides waiting for the other to flinch. Infantrymen were taught to bait snipers with helmets mounted on sticks, drawing their fire to expose them. The Allies also relied on new technology, radios, sound triangulation, even aerial reconnaissance, to detect sniper nests and call down overwhelming firepower. In cities like Aachen and Caen, entire platoons swept through buildings methodically, room by room, searching for the telltale camouflage and scoped rifles. When discovered, snipers rarely stood a chance. Mortars and flamethrowers were often used to burn them out of hiding places, reducing the hunter to prey. Even in forests where camouflage gave them an edge, the Allies learned to flush them out with grenades and concentrated rifle fire. For German snipers, the knowledge that the entire battlefield was tuned to hunt them made each mission nerve-shredding. One mistake, one careless movement could mean sudden and violent death. They were hunters, yes, but every time they pulled the trigger, they also signed their own death warrant. For most soldiers, war was endured as a collective ordeal. Squads, platoons, and companies sharing danger and exhaustion together. For snipers, the experience was lonelier and darker. Many operated alone or in pairs, sent ahead of the main force to stalk targets or cover sectors of the battlefield. This isolation created a unique kind of psychological torment. Hours spent lying motionless in ditches, treetops, or shattered buildings gave men too much time with their own thoughts. They were forced to stay utterly still as insects crawled across their faces. Rain soaked their uniforms, or snow froze their fingers. They could not cough, sneeze, or even shift weight without risking exposure. The mental strain was immense. Every shadow could conceal a counter-sniper. Every sound could be the enemy closing in. German accounts reveal how many snipers lived in constant paranoia, never certain if they were the hunter or already the hunted. Unlike infantry, who faced danger together, snipers carried the burden of fear alone. Their missions demanded cold precision, select a target, wait for hours, and fire a single lethal shot. Yet after pulling the trigger, adrenaline, often mixed with dread, knowing the shot gave away their position, and the enemy's retaliation would be swift and merciless. This cycle of anticipation, violence, and terror gnawed at even the strongest minds. Many carried the weight of guilt, too, as they remembered the faces of men they had deliberately picked off, sometimes medics or leaders who never saw death coming. Over time, the sniper's curse became not just the threat of being killed, but the slow erosion of their humanity. They were both feared and despised, but also profoundly alone. On the battlefield, German snipers faced the wrath of enemy soldiers, but in occupied towns and villages, they also earned the hatred of civilians. Stories circulated of German marksmen targeting not just soldiers, but farmers suspected of helping partisans, villagers who resisted requisitions, and even children used as messengers. Whether every story was true or not, the perception alone was enough to spark unrelenting fury. To civilians under occupation, and the sniper wasn't a soldier playing by rules, he was a ghost who killed without warning and often without distinction. When partisans or resistance fighters captured one, justice was often swift and brutal. Some were executed on the spot, others handed over to angry mobs. In Yugoslavia, occupied France, and across Eastern Europe, there are accounts of lynchings, beatings, and public humiliations. These men weren't treated as prisoners of war. They were symbols of oppression, predators who struck from the shadows and therefore enemies beyond mercy. Even in Germany's own propaganda, the sniper was glorified as a ruthless avenger, which only reinforced the hatred civilians felt when they encountered one in real life. For German snipers operating behind the lines, this was another layer of fear. They knew that if caught, no uniform or badge of rank would save them. Unlike infantry, who could surrender en masse, a sniper found alone in a hayloft or steeple was marked for death. This fueled their paranoia and deepened their isolation. To the civilians who suffered under occupation, vengeance against the sniper was personal. It wasn't just war. It was retribution for lives stolen by the unseen shot. The weapon of the German sniper was the Karabiner 98K, fitted with a telescopic sight. In the hands of an ordinary soldier, it was just another bolt-action rifle. In the hands of a trained sniper, it became a precision tool of terror. With its 7.92 millimeter round, the rifle could reach out across hundreds of meters, picking off men with frightening accuracy. Snipers were trained to aim not at random targets, but at the most valuable ones: officers, radio operators, medics, machine gunners. Taking out just one of these could halt an entire unit's progress, leaving survivors shaken and leaderless. But the very sight of this weapon carried its own danger. Allied soldiers learned quickly. If they captured a Kar 98K with a scope, they had found a sniper's tool. And with that discovery came rage. Many reports describe Allied troops refusing to allow captured snipers to live, beating or shooting them after identifying their scoped rifles. To the men who'd spent hours pinned down by a single ghostly shot, the weapon itself became a symbol of betrayal, war waged without honor. Even German snipers felt the weight of their tools. Carrying a scoped rifle marked them not just as specialists, but as hunted men. They often tried to hide among regular riflemen when retreating, stripping their weapons of scopes to avoid recognition. But in battle, the Kar 98K gave them away, its slow, deliberate cracks echoing against the backdrop of machine gun chatter. To their enemies, that sound was a reminder. Someone unseen was watching, waiting, and about to pull the trigger. By the war's end, German snipers had etched themselves into the collective memory of soldiers and civilians alike. They were regarded with a paradoxical mix of respect and revulsion, admired for their skill, despised for their methods. Many never lived long enough to see peace. Those who did often concealed their pasts, hiding the fact that they had been snipers, knowing the stigma might follow them for life. Unlike aces or decorated infantrymen, snipers rarely boasted of their wartime service. Their stories surfaced decades later, often told quietly, with shadows of guilt and fear still attached. Their legacy is complex. On one hand, they embodied the lethal efficiency of modern warfare, proving how one man with a rifle could change the course of a battle. On the other, they represented the most personal, intimate kind of killing, deliberate, targeted, and often without warning. This intimacy made them despised by their enemies, who rarely offered mercy when they were caught. Even today, the idea of the sniper carries an aura of both dread and fascination, shaped by the legends of Stalingrad, Normandy, and countless forgotten fields. The German sniper was feared not just because of his skill, but because he reminded every soldier that death could come at any moment, unseen, from the edge of the battlefield. And he was hunted without mercy because in a war filled with brutality, snipers seemed to embody its darkest truth. War stripped down to one man's crosshairs and one man's fate. They lived as shadows, they died as outcasts, and their memory lingers as one of the grimmest chapters of World War II's endless horrors.